Welcome to another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum, where all voices matter. I'm pleased to have back as my guest Tom Caldwell. He's the chairman of Caldwell Securities in Toronto. Economic news is coming in fast and furious these days, so let's get to it. Welcome back, Tom.
Thank you.
I guess the first thing would be to get your reaction to the recent interest rate hikes in the US, the UK, and Canada. What did you think about those?
Well, it's interesting. In our building, the Bank of Canada and the government have offices. So I saw the governor of the Bank of Canada walking through this morning on my way to the office, and I noted what appeared to be a bodyguard with him. So I don't know whether that's necessary or not. The interest rate increases, they're still being aggressive. I kind of feel we're reaching the end of a cycle. These were, except for Canada, these were 75 basis point increases. My guess is the next one might be a quarter. They might ease off. I think they're where they want to be, give or take 50 basis points. And then they have to wait and see what happens because there's tremendous lags to increasing interest rates and monetary policy. They can be 12 to 18 months later. So
Well,
I don't think
you've made that point before that it's not instantaneous. You raise interest rates and your problems are solved.
absolutely. So it's going to be a while. I think they're really trying to address psychology with verbiage in the process. If we're going to be tough, we're going to fight this, etc. It's really, I love that determination, given that they were the folks that caused the inflation in the first place. But I digress.
Yeah,
But I think we're reaching the top or near the top. We're near the end and the beginning of this interest rate increase. Because remember, we're coming from near zero.
right. Now, you did reference that the Bank of Canada did a half a point raise. The Federal Reserve did three quarters of a point. Should we be worried about that? Does that make a difference at all?
I don't honestly know because we're not going to be out of lockstep with the Americans in this matter because that affects the value of our dollar vis-a-vis the U.S. dollar. So on one hand, we don't want to see a weaker we don't want to see a weaker U.S. dollar, a weaker Canadian dollar relative to the U.S. because of an interest rate differential. So we'll be roughly in tune. 25 basis point doesn't make a great deal of difference either way. I think he wanted to show in Canada that we may be nearing the end of this increase process.
Okay, so that was a signal that because it wasn't three quarters of a point, that they're perhaps starting to reassess the situation. I guess the bigger issue, and I'm always asking you to look into your crystal ball here, but will these rate hikes stop inflation or risk a recession or both?
Inflation, as over a period of time, will tend to cure itself. People either can't or won't spend higher prices on things. Everybody's trying to push prices down the line, but there'll be a point here when people just won't accept it. So inflation can self-correct to some degree. There are worldly pressures going on here, and there are cost pressures. And it starts a lot in the interest rate, because remember, every bit of groceries, they got to come by truck, they've got to come by diesel. So they're starting this energy transition program with governments fixated on that. It was the genesis of much of the inflation we're now experiencing. Now, other stuff has come along with that, don't get me
Right.
wrong, but it was the start, pushing up your basic cost base. So will it solve the problem? At least to some degree. It may, once the psychology of inflation is in, it takes a long time to water its way down, and it will do it over time. But I hope to gosh, we don't have to do a Volcker thing with 18% interest rates, which was devastating to the economy.
It was indeed. I do remember those days. And of course, every time inflation goes up, there's more demands by bargaining agents to match the inflation in their next pay packet. So these things do have these longer term effects, right?
Well, we're seeing that right now. We are seeing unions saying, well, we've got to catch up. And I understand that because it's getting more expensive. Everything is getting more expensive. So there is a catch up to this. Once it starts, it can fuel on itself. Originally, this inflation started on the supply side, energy, supply chains, that
Right.
sort of thing. And then it wasn't excess demand. In higher interest rates really impact excess demand. That is not the kind of inflation we have. I do think to have a solely a monetary policy is like operating without anesthetic. The real demand here is you got governments on the fiscal side
Right.
still spending like they were in the United States and in Canada.